Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear students, very warm welcome here in the Festival Hall of St. Pölten University of Applied Sciences. It's my true pleasure to welcome you all the participants joining our discussion online and the distinguished guests on our podium to discuss about the interrelation of arts and tech and policy. I think this is a very important subject. It's more or less obvious that technology is shaping our everyday life. And it's also obvious that it's necessary that we need this, let's say, human touch and this artful touch within technology. So we need some kind of a new digital humanism, digital humanities. Or what I would prefer to call it, we need human digitalization. And I think there are a lot of things to be discussed, and I'm really looking forward. Just let me introduce myself. My name is Hannes Rafferseder. I'm a member of the executive board here at St. Pölten University of Applied Sciences. I'm also the leading coordinator of UDRES. UDRES is one of the 41 European universities in our continent. I'm, maybe some people say an expert in digitalization and a manager in higher education, but with my heart, my soul, my attitude, I'm an artist, a composer of contemporary classical music, and also a media artist. I did a lot of performances and installations, more or less all over the world. So I'm really curious about this topic, art and tech and policies. I'm looking forward. Let me introduce our first speaker and guest. It's Landesrat Martin Eichtinger, member of the state government of Lower Austria. Martin Eichtinger was a high-ranking diplomat. He was, amongst others, the former ambassador in the UK in London. He was also the head of the cultural policy section in the Austrian Foreign Ministry, so I think he has quite a lot to say to our topic. And Mr. Eichtinger, I ask you for your opening words of our discussion.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Rafferseder, and ladies and gentlemen, and certainly also listeners via live stream. I'm delighted to be here. When I look at this poster here, Art and Tech and Policy, I think I was invited to cover the area of politics, and I'm very pleased to do so. You can also judge from my tie and my suit, for which I almost apologize, because when you discuss arts, it's always kind of difficult to do it when you are formally dressed. But I come from so many meetings that this is the way that I have to be dressed during the day. Now, I'm really pleased to participate in this panel discussion. As Mr. Rafferseder said, in a former life, I was very much involved in cultural policy and in creativity and arts. And one of the most interesting things I had to do was to attend a monthly meeting of Director Generals for Culture of all the European Union member states. And of course, what was important was always the question, how can we get creativity from the arts into other spheres of life? Because it's the arts where creativity has its home, and the question is, how can this creativity transpire into other areas where it's desperately needed? Of course, we have just, hopefully, a pandemic behind us. That's at least what we truly hope. We have made great advances in vaccinating our population, in making sure that we will finally overcome what was also the worst recession that we have seen in Austria after World War II, with the highest unemployment. And we are really, I was just also present at our major European and international conference, which is the Europa Forum Wachau, and we had the title of Heading for New Horizons, because after all, this pandemic is such a major rupture in the history of our country that we really now need to look to the future. And of course, what we saw during the pandemic was that suddenly everybody went digital. Digitalization was the big word of the day. And of course, it all needs in the background a tremendous technology. So I think people are much more aware of the need for technology, but it also, as you pointed out, the question is humanism. The question is how can, behind all this digitalization, how can we still continue to live as human beings? And we have a lot of challenges. I'm also in charge of healthcare, at least not completely, but to some extent planning and financing. And we more and more move into the world of artificial intelligence and algorithms, and we become more and more technology-based and less human, if you like. So there is, in the treatments, in the use of healthcare data. So this is a fact. I think this, and I congratulate you on this panel discussion tonight, because I really also I'm here to learn from the great experience on the one hand of Open Austria. I was delighted to hear that was when I was still ambassador to the United Kingdom, that Open Austria was founded after our foreign minister had announced that Austria needed to have a sensor in what at that time I think was seen as the most important center for disruptive technology and innovation worldwide. The other centers have in the meantime emerged, but Silicon Valley still has this enormous brand, and I'm very delighted that Austria is so well represented in this key area of the world's innovation. And even more so when I look to Mrs. Clara Blum, who is now, she told me since 3 years ago, she has taken on this task of developing art and tech, developing art and technology. And I think this is what we are going to discuss tonight. I don't want to be too long. I think what is important for us is, on the one hand, to look to the human side and, as you said, humanity in all those questions of technology. And on the other side, we need even more creativity. Europe has a tremendous challenge. We have the challenge of not falling behind, of not lagging behind in this enormous drive forward by the big players like the United States and China. Europe needs to be competitive. It's the word that is so often used in Brussels. We have a difficult starting point because we are 27 very distinct member states, all of which have very great ideas on how we should develop Europe and the European Union further. But one fact is sure, that technology plays a major role. I think at the same time, Europe has this tremendous diversity, not only languages, but also culture and the arts, and this enormous amount of creativity, much more than any other continent in this world. And to merge this enormous creativity with the necessities of our technological development, while at the same time preserving our social way of life in Europe, I think this is the big challenge for the future, and I'm interested to discuss this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Echtinger. It's really a pleasure and our honor to have you here in this discussion. And you mentioned we need even more creativity, more arts here in Europe. And I think it was Jack Ma 2 or 3 years ago at the World Economic Forum, and I think everybody knows who that is, the former CEO of Alibaba, from China, who pointed out that we need and we have to educate our kids more in music, more in the arts, more in creativity. I think it's maybe dangerous for Europe if we need Jack Ma to tell us educate more in music and the arts. And good to hear this statement from a high-ranking politician. So thanks for that. And we will do our best as a higher education institution concerning these points. I would proceed with Clara Blume. A very warm welcome. Clara, you are the head of, as already mentioned, the Arts and Tech Lab of Open Austria. We're also engaged in leading positions in the GRID, a global network connecting artists and technologies. I think you are a cultural enthusiast, a singer-songwriter with a, I think, quite successful career here in Austria. And I ask you maybe two questions at once. First of all, I would like to know what is exciting you personally in between this interrelation of art and technology. You're so passionate about all these things. Why? What is the reason behind this? And of course, we would like to know a little more about your opinion and all your projects, what you are doing at the Art and Tech Lab.
Wow, so much to unfold here. I'm going to start by saying thank you for inviting me, and thank you for this very generous introduction. Well, I'm primarily interested at the intersection of art, tech, and policy. So this will become more and more relevant to us as we have to engage with regulators. It's not just an approach that can be conducted within our little ivory tower. We really have to engage with all groups that work on tech issues out there, and that of course entails tech companies. Obviously, that's why we're situated in Silicon Valley. But beyond that, tech regulators are increasingly interested in how to create global frameworks around tech innovation, and our tech ambassador will be much more qualified to answer those questions. But on my personal passion, why am I so interested in art and tech? Mostly I'm inspired by Ars Electronica and their long-standing work in this field that has really brought us and forged our portfolio in Silicon Valley. I have to absolutely say that they have been a relevant partner, an inspiring partner since the creation of Open Austria. My personal passion is really summarized in the very simple fact that I'm just curious about the limits and the potential of human creativity. And as we push that boundary even further and try to explore how that intersects with tech innovation, we come to understand more and more what actually makes us human and in which ways we differ from machines, or as I'd like to say, how machines differ from us or not so much. The more we explore this blurring border, we'll come to understand that there's so much we don't understand about ourselves. So this is really a journey of introspection. And the fact that we as artists are able to explore this in a collaborative manner with technologists, with policymakers, really is almost an exploration of the human spirit. So that really gets me going and gets me excited every morning to go to work. And this newly found institution that we just initiated last year, the Art and Tech Lab, I'm very proud of this because it's the first time that the Foreign Ministry has really breached a frontier inside foreign policy to specialize on the intersection of human and artificial creativity. So again, Austria has really proven to trailblaze its way into yet another innovative niche that we as humanity need to explore.
Very good from my opinion, and thanks a lot for all your engagement in these things. It's also important for us as a small University of Applied Sciences here in Lower Austria. It opens totally new worlds, and it's this discussion is part of our Creative Media Summer School, which was brought up to the table by my colleague Franz Fiedler. and it's I think for us, for our institution, for our students, for the students of our partner universities, really a very good opportunity to collaborate with you, with Open Austria, have this bridge to Silicon Valley, and so on. So many thanks to that. Ars Electronica was already mentioned, so I welcome Veronika Liebel. Veronika is managing director of the Festival exhibition and director of European projects within the Ars Electronica in Linz, and I think at least Austrians, but I think many people abroad do know that the Ars Electronica is a highly acknowledged success story, that it is an important trademark for the city of Linz, for Upper Austria, for all of our country, and which, from my opinion, is very important. Ars Electronica had really a huge contribution to the transformation, to the change of Linz from an industrial city to, I think, more or less a hotspot for culture, creativity, and so on. There is the Ars Electronica, there's another important partner for us, the Parkfabrik Linz. There are several other activities and so on. And I think the Ars Electronica was somehow the starting point. And so it's more or less the nucleus, from my opinion, of art and tech, and of course, policy and the strategy for regional development as well as for these international relations. So my question is, what is the secret behind? What is the recipe for the success of Ars Electronica?
Well, difficult to reveal in front of a public. Of course, we want to keep our secrets and trademarks. No, I think that the secret behind Ars Electronica has always been that we always looked at the intersections between art, technology, science, and society, and never picked out a discipline alone, but really tried to understand the dynamics caused by the nexus, caused by the interrelations between the disciplines. And of course, the biggest asset and the value are our artists we're working with. So we know all that art can be a fantastic catalyst also, and an important asset in understanding also how we can push the boundaries of our society, of our also creativity, and try to understand what kind of processes are really relevant for the future for our society. And for us, it has been always extremely important to understand also that it is not necessarily only about digitization, but it's really about the digital transformation as a whole. So we need to understand what kind of effects, not only on economical value, but also on all kinds of social, human, and cultural sides are triggered and caused by the digital transformation, and how we can master and shape them actively. So it's not only us, we really want to engage the whole society, also all kinds of different stakeholders from science, from industry, from culture, of course, to shape this process together with us. And we do this in the framework of a museum where we publicly also invite, of course, kids and youngsters and schools and, of course, the public society to do this together with us, but also with, of course, our international audience in the framework of the festival. So we hold each year quite global summit, I would say, in discussing these aspects further, where we also try to understand how we can accelerate, on the one side, digitalization and technologies through also the involvement of arts, but at the same time also rethink our relationship to technologies in a way that we can make sure that technologies are monitored, developed, deployed in the way we want them to be used. And this is, I think, an extremely important point, that it's not only about the technology part, it's really about also to understand how we gain responsibly, how we actually use the agency in terms of the technology. And this is something which is one of the core parts of our daily work, which is a fantastic one and a fantastic joy to work with such lovely partners, in particular as Open Austria. You're a fantastic window also to us, and also so many other partners represented here. Yeah.
So at least one important secret is to build bridges across different disciplines, cultures, questions, perspectives, and so on.
Yes.
And I think another important thing is that there is at least one, or that usually people are going to Silicon Valley or somewhere else to see what's going on within digital transformation and technology and so on. But there's at least 1 week in September where all these people from MIT and Stanford and so on come to Linz and to Austria, and I think this is also a very good thing. So thanks for all this work which you and all the team at Electronica is doing. Very welcome to Gerin Trautenberger. Gerin is the founder and owner of Microgiants, a company involved in design and research, design innovation. And he's also the chair of Creative Austria. Creative Austria is a part of the Austrian Chamber of Commerce, promoting, supporting creative people, the creative industries, commercializing their work, and so on. And Gerin is also a member of the board of the European Creative Business Network. For me, the question is, on the one hand, it's what is your opinion about these relationships? And you, as far as I know, you were also one of the co-founders of creative industries in Austria, and you are working for quite a long time now for and with all these people and these ideas and topics. So what has changed during these several years or maybe even decades concerning these things?
Oh, that's nearly a speech now.
Yeah, sure.
No, but first, thank you for the invitation. So actually, this is my first public experience, not in front of a camera via Zoom, for 15 months now. So I really, the first thing is, why are they serious? We meet. So thank you for the opportunity to have a real live interaction again. So concerning your question, so just to my person, to my persona, so to say, I'm self-employed for 25 years now. 20 years ago, the Creative Wirtschaft Austria was founded, so to say. So for 20 years, I was I was there in the beginning, but I was not president. So, anyways, but since 20 years, we are working in the field of creativity, of creative economy, so to say, and a lot has changed. I mean, at the beginning, we had sozusagen from the numbers and figures, 15,000 registered creatives in Austria, and the creative industries starts from fashion, design, architecture, games, everything which has a novelty aspect, so to say. And of course, it's market driven, so we always look at the market. It's not art like art per se, so to say. So in my case, I'm a trained artist, but in trade, I'm a designer. And also, I studied at the university, economics, so to say. So you see, there is a blurring distinction between that. I mean, we can say that in Austria today, there are 40,000 or 43,000 people accounted for the creative industries. So that's 10% of the total number of companies in Austria. Yeah? We together are responsible for 22 billion euros of turnover per year. I mean, it maybe last year it was a little bit less, so to say, but in general you can say that we are responsible for 4% of the Austrian national product. And in Europe, for example, there are 8 million of companies concerning the creative industries, and on the European level, we are also responsible for 4% of the total income of the European budget, so to say. So that's a huge number. But the problem is that 90% of these people are working from home. Are single entrepreneurs. They are not visible, so to say. There is no factory door in the morning where everybody goes and say, yeah, I'm here, clack, and then the evening they go out. You don't see them. They are not visible, so to say. And of course, our responsibility is to make them visible. And luckily, you know, after 12 years, we lobbying, so to say, the Austrian government adopted the Kreativwirtschaftsstrategie, the creative economy strategy, and this was the first European country who really put the creative economy at their agenda, you know, and it's about cross innovation, so how the creative industry can help the traditional industry to learn, to exchange experience, to bring the traditional economy forward, and to we say always the creatives are somehow the avant-garde. They are experimenting. They are of course there are some failures, you know, but there are other successes also, and we're working together with their clients. They help the clients to understand the new ways they have to work, the new ways they have to interact, engage, and develop new materials, new ideas, new processes, and so bringing me to art and tech and policy. So as you see in my personal experience, art and tech are really together somehow, and we don't see this clear distinction anymore between they are the engineers and they are the artists. Especially in design, you can say there is no distinction now. Yeah, and also I see the borders blurring between policy, art, and tech, especially in the fields where I'm working. And we see, I mean, as you said, I mean, the competition between the States and China. Where's Europe, you know, and the digital humanities? I think that's our USP, you know. In the States, we have sometimes a very brutal capitalist system. In China, we have an inhuman surveillance state, you know, and our answer could be, you know, the digital humanism and digital humanities, so to say. And this would be my plea today, you know, to say, well, this is our chance to make really a difference, not only in Austria, not only in Europe, also in the world.
Thanks a lot for this introduction from your point of view, and I think we can also keep this point. We have to make the creative people, the creative industries more visible, and I think it's maybe one important point in human life that it are the invisible things which make the importance and make the difference in many aspects, and I think it's also true for creative and artists. Martin Rauchbauer, Gerin mentioned this possibility, digital humanism and humanities as a European position. You are consul and tech ambassador of Austria in San Francisco, and you are co-director, as far as I know, the founding co-director of Open Austria, the Austrian ambassador in the Silicon Valley. Do you agree? And what is your position? And also, I give you this second question. From my experience, Open Austria is doing really a great job with a small team. I had the opportunity to come there for several times. I had some great experiences, important experiences. So also, what is your success story in Open Austria?
Well, thank you so much for this kind introduction of Open Austria and our work that is now in its 5th year, and in innovation 5 years is a long time. So a lot has happened since 2016 when we opened our Open Austria office in San Francisco. And if I now reflect a little bit on what those changes really are essentially, I think back at the time when we opened this office, there was this feeling, you know, technology, new technologies, that's something that is happening to us. And it's not happening everywhere in the same pace and in the same intensity. So we need to be in those places where new technologies are created and are shaped. And of course, Silicon Valley, with all these big tech companies that were growing at exponential growth and had become by the time global digital platforms, and were still seen as also something people really identified with. I remember lots of delegations coming in the first years where people would come to those global tech companies and would take pictures in front of their logos, and that kind of positive, almost admiration of Silicon Valley, then I would say after a while gave way to a counter movement. It's called, was called at the time Techlash or backlash against technology that was happening around the world, in Europe, but also even in the United States and even in Silicon Valley. And it had to do with the fact that people were increasingly feeling some of the downsides of new technologies, and were also beginning to grow scared of this prospect of some technologies like artificial intelligence replacing all of our jobs. What does that actually mean for our societies? And it also, we started to realize that it's not only, technology is not only affecting our jobs and our daily lives, but even our democratic institutions are affected negatively to some extent if we're not vigilant. And we realized in 2018, in our second year, when Austria actually had the EU presidency in Europe, but also locally there in Silicon Valley, that all of a sudden we talked to the tech companies, to Silicon Valley in an entirely new way. We were talking about regulations that was coming out of Europe at the time. There was the data protection regulation by the European Union entering into force in 2018, and all of a sudden Europe had a completely new face. It was not just, you know, this old continent that it was just slow and didn't produce innovation, but it was also seen as an innovator in terms of addressing some of those challenges of innovation. And what we soon found, that this newfound confidence of Europe, you know, in acting, coming out with new legislation almost on a, you know, monthly basis, if you look at the pace of what is happening and what has come out of Brussels and what is still to come, that it also kind of lacked two things. And one thing is to really address a crisis of confidence that citizens have with, at the same time, their political systems and our political systems, our democratic systems, and also with big technology companies. And we found, and I think this is, and I think I'm really proud to say this with so many friends and partners that have, you know, not only shaped Austria, but have shaped this topic on a global stage. If I think of Ars Electronica, that we really found an Austrian, and I would say, as it soon proved to be, European answer to this question by addressing at the same time these new anxieties about technologies, about surveillance, about the impact of technologies on our digital human rights, but also to look at the opportunities at the same time. And giving away from this kind of naive, techno-utopian optimism that was still, you know, holding Silicon Valley in 2016, and to be kind of have to develop into a very mature, self-confident and reflective attitude that looked at the opportunities without, you know, entering into this technophobia and this pushing away everything, which also was a very European response, unfortunately, but to look instead into the opportunities. And I think there art is the natural partner, because artists are not only creative, but they have, I mean, I think they really know what potential means in every sense of the word. They are about potential. They explore the limits of our universe by showing what they are, not only thinking about it, but showing about it. And this, I think, was something I'm very proud that since Clara joined us in you know, in our third year of our existence, no, in our second year of our existence, and the building up of this art tech portfolio, that we could really come up with a new proposal that was not just interesting to ourselves, but that was actually interesting to the tech companies and to our partners in the industry. And apart from the fact that it's an important topic, that it's important for our citizens, that it's important for our policymakers, and that it's also important for technologists, I think it has also fringe benefits, you know, to talk, to be relevant in Silicon Valley, to have topics that engage with all relevant stakeholders, that break open these silos. And one of the fringe benefits is that you can talk about technology in a new, uncontaminated way, and also look at the opportunities for our companies, for our startups, for our for our interests also. After all, that's really what, and I'm a career diplomat like Landesrat Eichtinger, it's also after looking after how can Austria position itself in the world, how can Europe position itself in the world, given the geopolitical situation that you mentioned, that we are really seeing a increasing confrontation between different value systems, which are not very advantageous to Europe, because we, I think, thrive as a continent from open economies and from a respect for the rule of law and for respect on human rights, also in the digital sphere. And this kind of polarization of those two worlds that you alluded to, and this increasing competition, is not in our interest. And I think, again here, Austria, with this idea of a new digital humanism, can actually contribute something that is not polarizing, but it is something that is attractive for all international actors, because we all care whether, no matter what kind of political value system we believe in, we all care about these questions, these eternal, universal questions of what it means to be a human being. So again, I think it's Open Austria is a tiny team, but I think thanks to our fantastic partners, and thanks also to the fact that this topic, art, tech and policy, gives us credibility. It's not a claim that everybody says, yeah, you Austrians, we don't believe you that you're so innovative. Show me the Austrian unicorns and things like that. So, but here we are credible, and here we have real partners that have been working for decades in the field, and I think there we've seen that we all of a sudden talk to people that we wouldn't have gained access to before, and we talk about them about real relevant things, relevant to us and relevant to them and relevant to our citizens.
So it definitely gives us credibility, visibility to act for digital humanism, and have this as a European approach to the digital transformation, as Garin said, and you and also Garin mentioned that the creative people, the artists, are somehow the avant-garde, and it's also my personal experience. Now people are looking at me and say, okay, this guy is a member of the executive board, so he should be taken serious. Maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I was just a crazy composer doing some weird music nobody wants to listen to, but I learned quite a lot of it, and maybe this is somehow like in Shakespeare's dramas, where the fool usually plays the very important role, and if this is true, then yes, I'd like to be this kind of fool who's changing the world, changing the stories, and so on, as a good role. Martin, you also mentioned that the artists are those guys who not only think and question art and tech and policy and all these things, but they are just doing it and shaping these things. So Clara, I would like to ask you, what are the best practices from your opinion so far to where artists shape these things and to make us a bit more real also in this discussion?
Are you asking me out of a personal experience or now in the professional environment?
You can choose.
All right. I'll try to pivot that question, how it suits my my personal appeals. I also want to stress the fact that I think once I answer, Veronica should take this away with very, very clear practical examples for over 40 years of implementing these models very successfully throughout the world. So in our daily work reality, we've really just started to investigate collaborative models with this so-called big tech. That's interesting because this is kind of the nut that no one managed to crack so far. It's really, really challenging to work with Google on equal footing, because usually you could, exchange Google for any of the major tech companies, but usually Google sets the terms. So when Google says it wants to collaborate with an artist, it has a very, very clear prerogative of how this relationship will unfold. And it will say, ultimately, it's not so much about the journey, dear artist, but it's really just about the outcome. So ultimately what we want a product and we want to sell something, which is obvious because they are, after all, a business. So sometimes when I try to mitigate in this space and talk to artists, I also kind of calm them and say, look, you have to understand that this is a very different work reality. Their goals differ greatly from what you want to accomplish. So it's in our interest and it's also our mandate to explain why this relationship is beneficial for companies and not just part from the way that everyone understands, like us, that art is an imperative, that art can really solve so many of the challenges that we've just tried to tackle in the last 10 minutes. So essentially, our role is really to fill that position and make a very strong case for all the partners involved. And that now very recently also includes policymakers, which is a silo that we haven't historically been in touch with when it comes to artistic experimentation, and really introduce them in this very sometimes awkward space of not really knowing exactly what to expect and being open-minded enough to engage in this experiment. We've now piloted a couple of workshops with Nobel laureates and state senators and other really incredible people, including the very, very gifted team of Ars Electronica. And of course, tech CEOs. I mean, my God, right? All in one room talking about what is the future of technology and how can we shape it better. And I have to admit that some of these people have never really thought about this. And that was the most surprising finding, that to most of the state senators or even the Nobel laureates, it was like, you know what? I was not entirely clear on the fact that I have to, address this topic. And so to make a case that this touches every silo, virtually every profession out there, every human being, this is completely detached from whether you're a professional or not. It really loops back into the question that you raised at the very beginning, that technology is affecting all of us in an indirect and direct way. And what Martin said later on, that when we first started this work, it was this abstract entity that no one really wanted to engage with, and especially not policymakers or diplomats, because, let's face it, it's drawn on a lot of expertise. And even though these lines or borders might be obviously blurred for conceptual artists or for designers for decades, it is not an obvious thing to do for a policymaker or a diplomat. But these eventually are the people that we need to convince, alongside tech companies, tech CEO, and all those policymakers around the world that are in charge of shaping the technology that will be consumed by billions and billions of people. And if we can introduce artists in the mix to, smoothen the communication, to really show the potential of technology in an unexpected fashion, then we've really done a good day's job. So I'm really proud of that.
Thanks a lot. Martin Eichtinger, Clara spoke about the importance of policymakers, politicians, and so on. Low Austria, I think, is doing really a lot, supporting the arts in really various fields, and also is doing for several years now really a lot supporting science, research, technology, and so on. But what, from your opinion, has to be done to reach all these goals, all these ideas, all these, I think, strong vision, and what is already going on?
Well, first of all, I really thank you for all your statements. Very, very impressive. I think we need to go back to look a little bit at what Lower Austria is and what Austria, what are the goals for us and for our citizens, and what do they want, and what can we offer to the world when it comes to our contribution. And I think we are in an excellent position. First of all, we are as a country, Lower Austria, as much when I think to cross-border cooperation as all of Austria, we are very much outward looking. And this is something which we should definitely keep. Of course, the pandemic forced us to go into lockdown, which is not really ours. I think we always had the debate, and Martin knows it in the foreign ministry, if Austria is a small or a middle-sized country. Of course, we always insisted that we are a middle-sized country, and we were so extremely happy that in the European Union there are quite a number of countries which are smaller than we are, so that we could really prove that we are a middle-sized country. But I think what we are is enormously outward-looking, which is reflected also in the way our economy is shaped. We are a country of small and medium-sized enterprises. We have 99.5% small and medium-sized enterprises, which by itself is already a lot of creativity. The one-person businesses that Gerrit mentioned, they are the backbone of our industry and our business community, because we don't have the big tankers, the big ships that sail on the world's oceans, but we have the small and very flexible entities. And this really, in the past, and it will be the same in the future, brought us an enormous success on the world stage. When you look to, I think in the Chamber of Economics, they always call them the hidden champions. We have so many companies who are ranked #1 when it comes to their global share in a very, very tiny, small niche. But whenever the situation changes and they need to reinvent themselves, they're able to do it, because they are very often also family businesses, but they're extremely flexible. And they're used to be perfectly at ease when they move around in the global sphere. And I think the same holds true for our artists. They are by nature internationally minded. Because we live and thrive on international cooperation, and so this is also a real strength of Austria. So yes, well, maybe there's another point that I should mention. When I was in former days, when I was in charge of cultural affairs abroad, there was rarely a country where you had to explain Austria as a nation of culture. This, we always said, Austria, the cultural superpower. This always looks a little bit like, grandstanding. It's not. For many, many countries, it's Austria where they primarily and first and foremost think of culture. So our artists have the big advantage that they come from a country where culture comes natural. And so if you take this mix, the creativity, the culture, the arts, internationally minded, the small and medium-sized enterprises with their flexibility and creativity, we have a lot to offer. We are strong on content. We don't have the big Google technologies, but we fill in the content and the dots where they are needed. And this is our real strength. I think this is where Austria has an enormous role to play. And we do the same in Lower Austria. We have the great niche players, which also in a pandemic and in a recession were extremely flexible to reinvent themselves and to be very successful at the time where other companies, big ones, went down. We were in the upswing because they were just enormously flexible. Within days, they switched production to something else. They invented something new. It was wonderful to see that. And behind that stands a very lively cultural scene in Lower Austria. You mentioned it. I mean, it's interesting that over the past 2 decades, Lower Austria has attracted so many Austrian artists who flocked into Lower Austria because they understood there was a sign of the chemistry was right in Lower Austria to assemble here and to create something big. So I think it's a good ground for great ideas, and this is something which we can play out as our contribution. But to go back to my initial statement, I think the European Union has to to make sure that precisely what we try to develop in Austria, that this is also a major European task. We have this enormous creativity in Europe, which we have not really brought to bear. I mean, it's in the United States, it was huge amount of investment capital that basically attracted the great minds from all around the globe. So this is very often that they get together and then create something in the United States because there is this enormous investment that makes it possible. We need to make sure in Europe that we can support our creative industries, our artists, the same way, and that we develop the big things also by joint efforts. The European Union tries to do that. I mean, when you look to the 7-year budget, there's more money to Horizon, to the scientific programs. Creative Europe got more. Is it enough? No, certainly not, because we have to match and to keep up with the others. But I think we have a fair role to play, and Open Austria as our lighthouse out there in the big world of the big companies is something where our creative people can move into the big companies and provide what they sometimes don't have in terms of creativity and flexibility. And maybe just one more word, because I've been for so many years a great fan and always attendant of the Ars Electronica. I think what Ars Electronica does in that respect, I mean, you are really our flagship when it comes to this field, where, as you pointed out, it's important to stay interdisciplinary and not to move into one direction or the others. You do that in a fantastic way, so congratulations. And this is one of the things that make us really important internationally.
Gerin Trautenberger, you are also strongly involved on the European level and in the board of European Creative Business Network, and I think you would like to respond.
Yeah, no, thank you for these words. I mean, it's always good to hear, also not from my side, always that to promote this Austrian way of dealing internationally, because we see really. I mean, according to our size, we have much more influence. I mean, it's no ratio. I mean, Germany, 10 times bigger. Not that many people are really on international level talking about like Kreativwirtschaftsstrategie, creative industry strategy. It's really like, we've such a small country. I mean, of course, we have mid-sized country. I learned that today. We, as a mid-sized country, have much more influence than it's supposed to be. So everywhere where I come and we talk about what we are doing in Austria and what we achieved in Austria, people look at me like in Austria we say, look like Eichhörnchen, look like squirrels. So, really, that's what's going on there? So we can see that the things we achieved in Austria, it's not very much appreciated inside the country, but it's really much appreciated outside the country. And we are role models for several other municipalities, counties, Landtage, so to say, in other countries. And this is really a big achievement what we can, and on European level. So to say, I mean, it's really astonishingly. I mean, of course, there's a huge backing in the diplomacy, so to say. Then the Wirtschaftskammer has an own, department only working that bringing Austrian entrepreneurs outside, and export. The Austria Wirtschaftsorganisation, AWO. So really, everybody who wants to go abroad should talk to them. They help. They have all the facilities, and I guess they're also in contact with you and with all the ambassadors everywhere. So to say, I mean, this is a huge chance for us to step outside of Austria, and there's a huge market, of course. I mean, it's difficult and it's hard, but there's a chance, and it's not always about that we have unicorns. It's really, I mean, we have game companies who have 100% export. They don't sell anything in Austria, but they stay in Austria because they say it's important to be in Austria. It's the climate, as the work climate here. It's also the climate nice. It's the mobility, as the transport system is okay. So they stay in Austria because they like it to be in Austria and export 100% of their goods. I mean, this is extraordinary. I mean, one chance we have, and you mentioned it, the Horizon, the following program from Horizon 2020. This is a new period. There's I think 100 million euros or even more. I mean, billions maybe. It's really a huge effort from the European Union to support the creative industries, and we have to look how the Austrian can participate in that. And of course, that's now our task in the Creative Wirtschaft Austria to look, where we can, contact and create consortia for Europe. And this is my last thing now. Also, we have to look for von der Leyen's initiative, the Green Deal. I mean, this is really a huge thing. It's maybe just starting, and even the Commission is looking what they can do with that. But to look, in 2050, that we have to transform our society and our economy, so to say, to meet all these UN goals, SDG goals. This is a huge effort for transformation, and I believe, and also we as an organization believe, that the creative industries and artists have a strong role in that, in these experimental frameworks and trying out new ways and new methods.
And again, it's not about separate things, but they belong together. It's the green deal, the digital transformation, the creativity, and then you can't do one thing without the others probably. And I think there is already a lot of things going on. Veronika, Ars Electronica was already celebrated quite a lot this evening, and of course when you started decades ago, Ars Electronica was more alone all over the globe with dealing with these subjects. I think it was really a very strong and future-looking vision when all these things started. Now I think there are a lot of other institutions and initiatives around there. What is necessary that if we come together maybe in 10 or 20 years back on this floor, that we again celebrate, it's so great what Ars Electronica is doing. What are the next steps, and what do you need that you can proceed?
You only want to know more about our secrets, right?
Sure.
I think, I mean, there are so many answers to this, but of course it comes again back to the discussion we just had. I think it's a mixture also of being aware what in particular the Austrian competence is also in acting or creating regional ecosystems which work interdisciplinary, but then actually also going out and trying to get inspired, trying also to expand beyond our own circles and try to work on an international stage. And what we see in particular in Linz is that since many years, Ars Electronica would not be able to accelerate, to grow that much without also the living ecosystem around. So we have an ecosystem of educational institutions, of industry partners, of science partners who really accelerate the whole creative cycle. And of course, that is also a very beneficial ecosystem for artists. And at the end, and what I think our competence in particular at Ars Electronica is then also to involve partners all over the world to even go beyond what we are doing in Linz, and to act really on an international scale. But for us, it is extremely important to act regional as well as international, and to build on our regional competencies also in Linz. And for us, of course, as a dream scenario, in a way, it would need also some kind of scalability in the sector. So what we've learned during the last years of collaboration also between arts, science and tech is that there were fantastic pilots, but they usually stay on an individual level. And for now, I think it is really time also to see and think, and in particular also involve European partners, how we can ensure that this doesn't stay only at individual levels, but really can expand as a methodology, as tools, as way of collaboration beyond these individual pilots. And there, I think we don't really have the answers in our sector yet. So this scalability is a huge problem still in our sector. And we are now trying also to go more into discussions into long-term partnerships where it is also a possibility to work via years, maybe even decades, and form sustainable ways and also scalable collaborations between art and tech.
So sustainability again, and this connectivity, scalability. I think this was a very important topic. If we look at least to the vision for the next years, and I would like to ask Martin Rauchbauer, what are the definitely next steps if we go out today and we start to work tomorrow? What has to be done on the level, on this international level at Open Austria, as well as the level of, for instance, our University of Applied Sciences here in St. Pölten, or some other kind of regional network and ecosystem, as Veronica also mentioned. We have to work on these regions as well on these international levels. What are the next steps? What has to be done tomorrow and maybe the day after?
If I think a little bit about what we've been saying in the discussion, I think we all agree about that, this great potential that the arts have, and that Austria has and Europe has in this ongoing transformation of our lives, of our societies, of our economies, and even of our political systems. I would like to point out that there are still things that we need to also learn and where we need to change also. And if I think of the word culture in a different sense, culture as in some ways based on values that a group or a region or a country shares, then I think one of the things that always strike me when I come back from Silicon Valley to Austria is that Austrians tend to be very polite, tend to be usually very shy about how great they actually are, and it usually takes a while to find out, if you have an interlocutor like a small business owner or a startup, an aspiring startup, that they actually have incredible skills, that they have actually incredible experience, that they have something really interesting to offer. Whereas when you are in Silicon Valley and you meet somebody, after 2 minutes, he already tells you everything, how great he is, and that it's the best idea, and it's going to change the world and make the world a better place. And then you scratch a little bit at the surface, and there's not always so much behind it. And I think probably a mix, that we learn some of these qualities. It's also a question of selling yourself better, but it's also, I think, it's not just about that. It's not about being disingenuous. It's also that in Silicon Valley, I think a lot of people, also Austrians, that go there and stay there for a while, or that move there for good, develop a kind of newfound confidence in that you can actually do something, that you can actually really change something. So I think that kind of spirit, which I think in Europe is far more prevalent in the artistic world than it is in the economy, but this confidence that you can actually make something happen and change something, that is something I think we can learn even today from Silicon Valley, and that is something on a European scale we should adopt, so a mindset change. And then the second thing I think we need to do in order to prepare ourselves for the next 5 to 10 years is to be a bit more strategic and about how we distribute our resources, where we invest as Europeans, and to be bold and rather than to always think. I think Europe has so many initiatives, so many success stories, so many entrepreneurs, small ecosystems, that if you would just simply have a better strategy behind it, both on a European level as on a national level, I think we could do with our resources a lot better internationally. So what I think what Europe needs, and Austria also needs, is a strategy for the next 5 to 10 years, what we want to do in this digital age, where we want to shine, and then pour resources into it. And other countries have shown the way, and also to talk about it and be proud about it, and not to hide with what we have. And I think other countries like the Nordic countries or the have shown that they are, that they've become known as very innovative countries. I think we are just as innovative, but we just need to pour our resources strategically and talk about that. There are other countries in Europe that for the example, the Baltic countries that are now a household name, even in Silicon Valley, for reforming their government and public services with e-government, for example. I think if Austria in particular and the European Union as a whole looks at where it wants to invest and its resources better, I think it can still become in this geopolitical competition. It can still become a continent that at the same time has incredibly high standard of living, that respects human rights, and that has an open, outward-looking society that doesn't close itself off to the rest of the world, and that in some ways takes the challenges and also the downsides of this new world seriously, but at the same time looks at the opportunities. And I think if we do that as Europe, if we do that as Austria, I think we have a bright future ahead.
Thanks a lot, and this was almost a very good closing words. But if we look to the future, there's at least one more very important topic, and I think is our talents. And we have some students with us, and I think you maybe have one or two last questions to one of these guests. So please join us on stage, and I give you my microphone.
Hello. I have two questions. My first question is to all of you. Like, what were the biggest aims that were reached in your last projects, referred to the topic art, tech, and policy? And the second question is, how do you get inspired to start new projects with maybe new and bigger aims than you already have achieved? So.
Thanks. Who would like to answer?
I didn't get the first one.
The first question was about the aims and the best practices reached so far.
Okay.
I'm just going to take this one first. Honestly, today I feel, first of all, I haven't slept almost because I'm still jet-lagged and none of this makes sense to me. But I'm still feeling incredibly energized. And the reason for this is this group of people right there, which I had the privilege, together with Martin, to teach a course around exactly that topic for an entire week. And now we're in the phase where we're actually creating a hands-on art project that hopefully we'll be able to exhibit at Ars Electronica in our little garden, Silicon Valley. So what I'm trying to say with this is, and I'm going to take a little bit of a windy road here to answer your question, but it kind of loops all the topics that we touched upon into, to me, one very, very relevant, or let's just say the essential takeaway message from me. And this is why we're having this conversation in the FH St. Pölten. Education is clearly the silver bullet, right? This is a saying that has been true since the beginning of time. And the people who take that as a prerogative and really as the highest order in every national business, they will clearly be the leaders of the fourth industrial revolution. And the students in this institution have really shown that they've understood that interdisciplinarity is the future. It's not about the siloed thinking that all of us have really touched upon in our different fields of expertise. It is about trying to develop a holistic understanding of the human spirit and a holistic understanding of a very, very complex, intertwined, and interdependent world. And still developing also this broad knowledge while some sort of expertise where you can specialize. We will find further down the road that this will be very clearly about creativity, interdisciplinarity, and beyond that, developing a self for the human being. What is it that the human spirit wants to achieve in the 21st century? What are the frontiers that we can breach? And these are the questions that our young students will be guided by as their North Stars. So when you ask us, what are the goals, what are our major aims, and what are the things that we aspire to in future projects, it's exactly that. It's not only inspiring future generation, it's really trying to create and foster a ground, like a flourishing ground for innovation and young, inspired minds that can grow from that. And that's not a given. It's clearly a very, very privileged ground that we're standing on, but this is not a given throughout the world. And I think the thing that inspires me in my daily work is really working in this tension of promoting national interests while understanding that we're facing global challenges. So trying to bridge those two worlds that sometimes seem contradictory, to advocate for what is best for the interests of Austria, while understanding that we can never tackle whatever is ahead of us alone. And I think more and more this will be the projects that determine the future of Open Austria.
Thanks a lot, and maybe there's another question.
Answer this
Please.
question too.
Yeah.
So the first question was, what was my last project I admire? I mean, and maybe I answered with that also the second question. So what inspires me? I mean, in all the projects I'm attending, and I have the privilege to select the projects I work with. It's not so much that I have to take every project which is just coming around. So I have to say this is a privilege, obviously. But it's something, you know, where you look at it and you think it's impossible. Where people tell you it's impossible, that's never work. That will never work. So, I mean, I guess you experienced that too. That there is something, you know, and you think, oh, that's odd, that's, and then, you know, because I'm a strong believer of collaboration. I'm not thinking that there exists a solo special artist with a genius mind. It's always a group of people, and also these geniuses have groups of people they work with actually. So also Leonardo da Vinci had his workshop where he had lots of people working with him. So working with other people to solve seemingly possible task, that's really inspiring, and that's all my projects now, and used to be a project which looked at the first sight very complicated, very strange, and through the collaboration of art and tech we solved usually these problems. Was it a web page, was it an installation, was it a conference, you know? Even a conference is sometimes really difficult to think ahead what makes people come to your conference. It can be also a disaster, of course, you know. But to believe in yourself, I mean, this is now this Silicon Valley thing, but really believing that you make it and find the people to work with and to solve the problems, that's really inspiring for me.
Here as well, I think when you ask what the aim in art and tech is, you're already at the first right starting point, because I see in so many of our collaborations that journeys and collaborations usually start from the idea of getting this fantastic inspiration and trying, of course, also to give something back. but you have to start this collaboration with a clear identification of an objective. You need to understand also how to do collaborations between art and technology and how to ensure that the outcome is also along with the expectations of all collaborating partners. And I think this is something I can only pass forward because I'm facilitating also so many collaborations between artists and scientists, artists and technologies, that this first step is extremely crucial. And in our daily life, in our daily work at Ars Electronica, we see so many collaborations with different kind of objectives for, of course, artistic production, but also trying to advance technologies in a way that they hack technologies, alter the use of technologies, or create agency shift from the tech companies to the consumers. And of course, we see also a lot of educational objectives. So also technological literacy and understanding is a huge topic to really increase digital skills, digital competencies, of course, the whole understanding and knowledge of digital transformation processes. So my point is, I think that creating this understanding in which direction you want to go is already extremely important and is already a first step to understand also what the beneficial part of such a collaboration can be. And for us, we see in our work, and here I can only invite you back again to Ars Electronica in September, we see so many fantastic projects and inspirations, one of which actually a collaboration with the Foreign Ministry, where we were part of a jury meeting just, I think, 4 weeks ago, where we awarded or actually selected our shared award for digital humanity with a fantastic prize. It's called Branch Magazine. They are building a community across different disciplines where they're actually wanting to develop a sustainable internet for all. And they're really inviting people from all across different sectors, from technology, from science, from society, from civil society, from arts, to really work together on shared objectives. And this is one of the examples which drives us at Ars Electronica so much to also build the fundaments and create the environment in all for artists to flourish also, the next steps.
One more thing, because I agree with everything that Froni, Clara, and you have said. Just want to add one more thing. After having talked to many of the students of our course about their situation, that they're planning now their future, and I really detected in all of you this thread, which I think is really great, that you have these skills, that you've developed these different experiences, but you're also really curious to look beyond your silo. To look beyond this world that you've developed the skills in and look into a completely different world. And I want to tell you, this is not always comfortable to expose yourself to a world that you're not familiar with, that you're going outside of the comfort zone, which is really the topic of our panel, Art, Tech and Policy, which are 3 very different worlds. And do that to yourself. It's not always comfortable to surround yourself with ideas or even people that have a completely different look at the world, that might even be smarter than you, that might even know more than you, and that challenge you, and that will really make your ideas, because I know that you all have your secret dreams and your ideas, and that will be the kind of nourishment that you will get for your ideas, because you can make them happen. And you will make them happen. That's a bit of Silicon Valley here now, and you're going to come out with this idea to change the world.
Thanks a lot. Is there maybe one last and short question, and just one of us, maybe Herr Landesrat Eichtinger, could give a hopefully short answer?
Yes, so I hope it's a short question. Thank you, Clara. Thank you, Martin, for an amazing week together. And the question that also might some people watching interest, and which also interests me, and I hope you can answer short, is the question of you mentioned in the beginning digital humanism, human rights in a digital realm. and what can one do in their daily lives to promote these ideas and these questions, and to inspire conversation about it in a broader spectrum, because I think it's really from the roots that this movement also has to come.
Martin Eichtinger.
Good one. Maybe I'll just say two things first, because the debate was so interesting, and the question was what was really recently the greatest achievement. It's not personal, it's more on an international level, but when we talked about international cooperation, for me, the most mind-boggling experience over the last months, because I was partially involved in, of course, trying to fight the pandemic, was this tremendous international cooperation when it came to create vaccines. Because, you know, not only a year ago we were told that at the earliest we would have a vaccine this summer, and we had it at the turn of the year, but also an enormous impression from the cooperation of scientists all around the globe. Suddenly borders didn't mean anything. Suddenly the exchange of information on the vaccines traveled around the world. One could say even sometimes regardless of very strong political restrictions. We were in the midst of that, and we were actually quite proud what Austria was able to do during this pandemic, because we have an electronic medical file system which helped us enormously. I was 2 years ago in the United States, and we told them we have an electronic medical file for all the citizens, and they said, oh my God, we have been working on this for 20 years. We are giving out incentives that small groups of people share that we can share the medical data. We were able to offer electronic recipes, so people, medication, so people could go to the pharmacy and could have a medication via electronic means, while at the same time I learned that 78% of the Swiss pharmacies still use fax machines to transmit that, which again made us enormously proud. But to come to the question and to the point, I think how can we get humanity into the digital world on a daily basis, if I understood correctly? What can we do? And I think it's to be out there to be advocates of this humanity when it comes to all decisions that are out there, and to pick something up which Gerrit said. The next big challenge after the pandemic is certainly our environment and the Green Deal and sustainability, and the fact that we don't have a planet B. And I think where we really would need to have not only humanity enshrined in how we develop this European Green Deal and our fight against climate change, we need to do this, because it's a complete change of our society, which will take quite a while. And where we will need also the help of artists, by the way, and it would be great to have ideas from artists how we can transform the society. That will be necessary over the next decades, and this transformation to a new sustainable society with the CO2 reductions, with everything that we need to preserve our planet, needs to have humanity in its transition process. So I think this is something where we need to be very loud, and we need to be an advocate that this transformation happens in a very balanced way. We are not supposed to lose jobs and make people unemployed. We need to at the same time use the opportunities that we get from green jobs and other things. But we need to have a great balance, and we are not supposed to overlook the social and human dimension of this great transformation process. And this is something which we need to be aware of every day when we go into this phase of transforming our society.
Thanks a lot. And I would like to add maybe one last statement to this. I think good art is creating alternative experiences which cannot be explained with words and are not to think about it, but just to feel them. And art is maybe about some certain kind of spirit. It's about emotions. It's about inspiration. All these are things which are not be able to be measured or to be predicted, and so on. If we want to bring this humanity to the digital world, then I think the most important thing is that we should not stop to dream. Not to dream about a better world and sustainable place and so on. I think this is maybe a very important thing. I would really like to thank all of you. I think it was a very exciting, very inspiring discussion, and I think we could go on for another maybe even hour. And it's my pleasure to announce that this is not the end of a discussion, but it's more or less a starting point, hopefully, of a ongoing collaboration between us, our institutions, and so on. So we would like to initiate a part, we call it an Austrian platform for art and tech thinking, which should connect all these things, which should be an open platform for everybody who is interested in these things, and keep on going and collaborating on all these things. So everybody is invited to this new Austrian platform for art and tech thinking. For today, I really want to thank you all. And I would, of course, also want to thank our team here at the University of Applied Sciences in St. Pölten, and I would especially thank my colleague Franz Fiedler once again, who is one of the masterminds behind this discussion and these things, and the Creative Media School, of course, with a lot of teams behind. Thanks for today. Have a good evening, and I hope to see you quite soon, talking again about art and tech and policies, and hopefully a prosperous future. Thanks a lot.